Topologies membership call. This time we decided to keep it open for everybody in the world. And we believe some of you are watching and will be watching this on YouTube. We're super happy, Roland and myself, to have Gunther here with us today with a very interesting talk, actually, about how to move Scrum downfield. I think that's how it's called. And I'm really interested to learn about that because I mean, Roland and myself, we always say we are Scrum trainers and Scrum coaches. We pray to the same gods, but we just go to different churches, Scrum Alliance and Scrum Org. And Scrum has probably lost its momentum some years ago. And some people might wonder, is Scrum still relevant? And that's why I think this talk is super interesting to hear the opinion of Gunther, who has been in this field for many, many years. And I would like to see how Scrum is still relevant, especially in the era of AI and everything that is happening around that. So, Roland, say hi to the audience.
Hi, I'm
That's
waiting for Gunther to start. Let's go.
that's Roland, and Gunther, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you, Alexei. Now, just sort of a warning up front. I'm not going to talk about AI. I'll talk a lot about Scrum, but not just yet at AI. I'm not an expert or whatever. So, thanks very much for having me, both Alexei and Roland. As I was preparing my talk, my presentation, I've also tried to sort of build some bridges or connections between my talk and what you guys do with org topologies. I hope that works out. Also for the people that are not aware of it, because it's now a sort of a mixed audience, so general public as well as org topologies community members. We'll see how that works out. And I want to talk about what I call the future state of Scrum indeed. Unfortunately, Alexei, I must agree that Scrum has become totally irrelevant. Scrum is dead, Agile is dead, anything you want, but mainly on LinkedIn. In my experience in the real world out there, there's still tons and tons of people that need help, that want help, that ask for help, that are struggling, that are very happy with information we give them. So my honest feeling is that it's mostly something on LinkedIn. Scrum is dead, Scrum is irrelevant, Scrum is not agile. We know all the typical cliches. So I truly believe that there's an incredible future for Scrum. It doesn't mean that we can sit back and relax and that it will happen by itself. So I want to share some ideas that I would say it's about the future state of Scrum. When I was looking for an angle for my presentation this week, I felt like taking you guys and the audience through time. So a little bit of a time travel. And as you said, Alexei, I've been in this world for quite a while now. I started in 2003. This year is 2025. Future state of Scrum, hopefully also beyond 2025. But as I'm no wizard. Sometimes people think I am, but I'm not. I can't look into the future. I have no idea what is going to happen. I can only appeal to people to make it happen. So we can't predict the future, but still we can try to shape the future. And that's sort of what my talk is about. So I started a long time ago, back in 2003. I've been in a very fortunate position working with great people by then that were intrinsically motivated. And another big thing is that we started out with something that's called extreme programming, which looking back was incredibly important that my life of Scrum started with extreme programming. Really, really great. It showed me as from day one the importance of having great development engineering practices within Scrum. So we use Scrum to wrap extreme programming. But I want to take you guys a little bit forward back to in this case back to 2013. So from 23 to 2013, 10 years of Scrum, just doing Scrum, no ambitions, I'm not into title things anyhow. Just doing Scrum in diverse circumstances with different teams, in different technologies, different organizations, different types of organizations. So really beautiful. And maybe that's the reason why it helped me back in 2013 to write a little book about Scrum. It's called Scrum, a pocket guide. It was published with a Dutch publisher, obviously, because the Netherlands is still Scrum country #1 in the world by then and still today. And it was called Scrum, a pocket guide. Created it in 2013. In the meantime, last year, 2024, there was an update published, the fourth edition already. I would have never imagined that in 2013. But even in that first edition, 2013, the last sort of statement in the book was sort of my belief, my hope, my dream, my ambition, whatever you want to call it, my aspiration around the future state of Scrum. So in that statement, I said the future state of Scrum will no longer be called, but I said Scrum. Because I hoped, dreamed, and I still believe that what we now by then, but even today call Scrum, will have become the norm. And organizations will have reorganized around it, or organizational structures will have re-emerged around Scrum. Now, we've moved on a little bit. And in the meantime, I've learned that it's going to require a little bit more than just me publishing such a statement in a little book. But I still believe that. And what I call with Scrum will no longer be called Scrum because it's my belief that it will have become obvious because people will not think about it anymore. The terminology, people will just work in short cycles. We will address the accountabilities as defined in Scrum without thinking about the terminology and the formalities all the time. So that's still my belief. But that I wrote that in 2013. By coincidence, it was in the period between ending my work as a principal consultant at Capgemini and then entering my partnership with Ken Schreber and Scrum.org. In 2016, I stopped working exclusively with Ken and for Scrum.org because I wanted to go out there in the world again, work with teams, work with organizations, do consulting. So already in that year, I've been visiting several organizations. And what I found, it was still the era of agile transformations. I don't know if anybody still remembers that. Good for us that those days are over, but still, that was still a lot of companies in whatever they called an agile transformation. And my main finding was that most agile transformations, and I wrote that in 2016, 2017, published a paper about it, or 2019, made a little movie about it. I said, most agile transformations don't deliver anything else but what I call an illusion of agility. Some form of agility that they think, oh yeah, as organizations, we are now flexible, we are responsive, we are whatever. But in the end, it was absolutely not what most organizations hoped for. Often after going 2, 3, 4 years through whatever they called an agile transformation. And at the heart of the problem is that they were running their agile transformations not on, let's say, agile or iterative incremental, whatever principles. They were doing it in the industrial mode, large scale, mass production, copy pasting what other people were doing, forcing all teams throughout an organization to work exactly in the same way, often illustrated by the fact that all teams throughout an organization have to start and end their sprints on the same day. Everybody has to go for, and I was like, oh my God, this is like industrializing your Scrum to death rather than building on it to actually increase your agility. So as I said, that illusion of agility or that road is often ended or terminated by what I call the deflation by reality. At some point of time, organizations, managers, leadership teams themselves wake up and find that their agility is absolutely not what they hoped it would be. So that's what I described. And then I went to look a little bit deeper. And one of the core problems connected to that is that, agile, Scrum, whatever, that's right, that's all for the teams. So, and I've tried depict that in this. So we've got these traditional organizations with business and IT silos, often department functional silos, often with a big gap between business and IT. They're like treating each other as if they are the enemy, although they're working for the same company, trying to save the same customers and sort of trying to benefit from the same sources of revenues and so on. We've got governance to make sure that people work together and so on. And often an organization has all of these individuals running through the organization, sort of like headless chickens. Nobody knows from each other what everybody's doing. Everybody's busy. Utilization, we have to be busy, have to run around a lot. And then they go for this thing that they call agile. They go through an agile transformation. And in general, the only thing they do is that they combine some individuals in whatever they would call teams. Often within those silos, within those departments, within those functional silos, let's say. And then they expect to be agile. Now, my finding was in a lot of those teams being formed, if I would look at org topologies, I think often it's people with combined with where they can do functional tasks, and you call it tasks one or the I1 or the I0 level. Sometimes might have been multi-skilled tasks, capable teams, tasks too. But in general, it could have been, sometimes it was people working the A2 part of the org topologies map. But in general, it was people with A0 or A1 capabilities, meaning some functional capabilities, not end-to-end, often limited to individual skills, individual expertise, and so on. But that was sort of the teams that were, let's say, constructed like that, were at best sort of in the, or in general, A0, A1, at best maybe A2. Certainly in the Netherlands, that was mostly already towards A2. Yeah? But that's, as you know, with org topologies, that's not enough. And it's also what those companies find, sort of with that deflation by reality. At some point of time, they take a step back, they look back at all the things they've been doing, they look at the result, and they still find, oh my God, this is still very rigid. Because you've got what I would call micro teams often within those silos and so on. It's still rigid. It's not agile. It's not, they've not increased agility. They've just kept in place rigidity. And rigidity for me is sort of the antithesis of agility. And when I look the way that they've been setting up those teams, my big question is, where is product in all of these things? You got all those micro teams, often in functional silos, and often even crazy, almost unknowingly, in the end, a lot of those teams work on the same sort of product, but nobody knows about it. Nobody's taking care of it. You've got just micro teams throwing work over the wall to the next team, to the release department. Team work gets thrown back from another team to a previous team. They have to interrupt their sprint and continue and redo work that they did like 4, 5, whatever sprints ago. So the idea of product was lost. And it led to my statement saying that, you know what, more agile teams do not make a more agile organization. Or the other way around, would say limiting agile or the introduction of Scrum to the level of the team is certainly not enough. But even then, you have to consider product. And by then, 2016, 2017, I felt like it's not good enough to make those observations. Because, Scrum, iterative incremental way of work, is all about inspection adaptation. So my inspection is most agile transformations lead to no more than illusion of agility, lacking definition of products, very suboptimally organized teams. Doing those findings, making those observations, not enough. We've got already plenty of people, look at LinkedIn again, that do nothing else that make a life out of bashing things rather than bringing something positive to the world. So I felt like I want to help organizations, and I wanted to formulate a sort of alternative approach to, by then, the typical agile transformations. And I found this old English word that for me is still covered it by then, but still does it today. It's called to reversify. First of all, it's a verb. which is good. It's an action. It's something that you do, and it's about harmony. So on top of the screen you see the definition from the dictionary of what reversify means. It's sort of at the heart of it is verse, meaning restoring the verse, the rhythm, the poetry to an existing text. That is the original meaning. And I felt like using that word to restore what I called organizational harmony. And in that, I foresaw by then, 2016, 2017, at least two steps to reimagine an organization Scrum in order, more ultimate goal, re-emerges structures around Scrum. Why is that? Because in 2013, my statement about the future state of Scrum will have become the norm, was like, yeah, maybe not really happening. And even if it is happening, what they call Scrum is not what I would call Scrum. In that sense, the benefits they will get out of Scrum is not what I know we can get out of it. It's so limited. It's so suboptimal, at least. Let alone that people are not willing to rethink the structures, the organizations, procedures, governance, anything you can think around Scrum. So Scrum introduced, and the end result only micro teams. So I felt like we need to help people, and I formulated this alternative to that. And the first step was to reimagine your Scrum. So going back to organizations, so you've done all of this scaled mass production approach to agile transformations, whatever, all of your teams. Let's make it small again. Let's have a look at one area, one product, one service, one project, whatever you want to call it, to see where you're doing Scrum. So we're going to leave alone all of the other ones. We just focus on that one domain area, whatever you want to call it. And let's start by identifying what is the actual product that they're working on. And let's reorganize, let's reimagine our Scrum around that product. But why is that idea of knowing your product so important? It was formulated like that. In the meantime, also in the Scrum Guide, I formulated like that in early 2020 and even before. Product is the vehicle to deliver value. Introducing Scrum, adopting Scrum should increase your ability to deliver value. And value is a very different driver than volume is. Volume, that is the industrial way of thinking, the corporate BS, whatever. It's about doing more, faster, and so on. Value is about doing the right thing, not just doing more, the thing with the biggest impact. And Scrum is all about increasing your ability to deliver value. And if we accept that product is the vehicle to deliver value, then the idea, the definition of product is incredibly important. But then obviously people start asking, yeah, but what do you mean with product? And already a long time ago, because that's what happens when you've been doing this for almost 22 years. You've got questions around this in classes, in trainings, in consulting assignments, and so on. And people ask for what is a product. So really a long time ago, I did some research trying to find a definition of product. And what I found in dictionaries and even in big product management books was rather boring. Not really helpful, is the definitions that you see on top. A substance, something that is manufactured, something that's refined for sale, whatever. It's not really helpful. So I wanted to make my own definition of what for me product means in a context of Scrum. And that means for me, context of Scrum, product can be a product, something you create. It can be a physical thing, it can be a non-tangible thing, it can be a digital thing, it can be an online product, it can be something that you actually ship, anything. It can be a good, it can be a device in the end, it can be a service you want to provide to people. Ultimately, even, why not, an experience you try to offer to people. So all those things fall under the, for me, definition of product. But what important is for my definition of product, it's about providing value. And I want to make it even more strict, not just value to anybody, but value to the consumers of the product. So that means for me, in a context of Scrum, it is only a product if it provides value to the consumers of the product, to the people in the end having to use the product, having to apply the product, having to build on the product, whatever, to solve problems that they have. And why did I make it so strict? because I'm sort of fed up with all these ideas, Scrum suboptimal micro teams within limited to what you would call A1, A2, whatever, limited to just thing. And connected to that is that those teams often only work on components of a product or a subsystem or a sub-thing of a product. Nobody's taking care of the overall, the overarching end product. And that's why I say it's only a product for me in Scrum if it delivers sort of end-to-end value, start to finish value to consumers. Otherwise, we'll end up with calling everything a product, and then we are not helping people. And although that might be semantically might be correct, not helping in a context of Scrum. So that is for me important.
Gunther, I think you're right on spot with your definition and your like search for a better definition, because indeed we find that the term product is like super overloaded with different meanings.
Yep.
And we used to have like product somewhere on top of the Topologies map before, like there was a whole product and partial product. Some people might remember that, but because like people mean so different things when we say product, we thought it's actually beyond repair to explain what we actually mean by that.
Okay.
like something close to your definition. So we removed that word, and now we are actually talking about a real solution, like something that really changes their lives or solves some problem on the consumer side.
Yeah, cool. I feel in a way your pain. I understand where you try to take this, but I can already assure you that even calling it differently, people will abuse it. To
Oh, yes,
call whatever
sure.
they would call a solution, it's not what you intended with a solution.
Sure.
Like it's just what happens. So, but I wanted to be really clear. So, product can be a solution, a good, whatever, but it has to, in a Scrum context, it has to provide value to the consumers, the people, sort of at the end of whatever you would call value stream or whatever. Yeah. So we're totally aligned on that part. So really important. And why is it important? Because product, in my view, should define your Scrum. In that sense, I feel like product defines the scope of your Scrum. Who's the owner? How does your product backlog look like? But most important, and that's, I wanna connect to org topologies a lot. Product should define what it means to have a done increment available. And why is that important? Because the team composition should be a result of the definition of done and not the other way around. So in my book, Scrum Pocket Guide, the last edition, Imagine 2024, I really made that explicit because in most organizations, the definition of done reflects what the existing team is able to do, which excludes a lot of things that should be done. So by starting with product and defining what it means to have a done version of the product available, what sort of quality expectations, what sort of work, then compose the team, then form the team that has all the skills, the expertise to actually be able to achieve that. So the team composition should be the result of done and not the other way around. Definition done should not just mirror what the team is able to do.
Ilya has his hand raised. Speak up. You have a question?
Yeah, first need to find the mute button as usual. Thanks a lot. I still find that kind of a fascinating topic, the definition of products, and I mean their whole. Thanks a lot for bringing this up again. This shows how important it is to know the product.
Yeah.
What I'm wondering about is, was the definition that you said is very strict, is in a way still very broad. At least this is how it feels to me, and. Because it focuses on the one hand strictly on this needs to be a vehicle for value delivery, but the difficulty I feel is in defining kind of the boundaries. This is part of this product, and this is not. And the question I had was, how far is it a question of identifying these boundaries, figuring out, okay, where are those boundaries, and how far is it the question of defining those boundaries? basically saying this is how we set them.
Yeah, if I say in reimagine your Scrum, take a step back, look at sort of one area of the organization, whatever you do in Scrum, look at know your product. And the starting point for me, Ilya, and all the other people, is always start with the consumers. Who are you doing this for? So if you're going to define boundaries, please go ahead, but start with consumers. Don't start with technical systems, applications, whatever involved. Start with the consumers. Take that step back. Try to take that helicopter view. Yeah. But it's important. And the reason I'm focusing on it so much is because too many organizations ignore this. They just circumvent this totally. Yeah, but now doing Scrum, we've got all those teams in place. We're doing Scrum. They all have a product backlog and so on. And then you look at it and say, yeah, but that seems like a backlog, not really for a product, is it? That's more like a team backlog. So, and that's where I want to help. So take a step back. It's not an easy step, but start with the people that you are trying to serve with your work, with your service, with whatever, and then define your product starting from there.
There's also a quick question in the chat about the definition of an increment. You might you might say you will cover it later, and then I will postpone this question until later.
No, not really. It's an interesting question. It pops up
so
in even.
The question
Go
is,
ahead.
like, what's about Scrum increments, Gunther? Many increments fail to deliver direct value to customers, though they offer significant value to the Scrum team by providing learning opportunities. Like, would you? I think the question is, like, would you consider those increments if they don't deliver value to consumers but still provide some learning?
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a fuzzy thing. So incrementing Scrum is first of all a term that is difficult to explain. The way I explain, because the good thing it's only one word. The way I explain it, I always say a synonym for increment for me means a releasable version of your product. That is increment, a releasable version of your product. Like the Scrum Guide calls it usable. I don't really care. It's sort of the same meaning. Usable means in a state that it can be potentially used by end users. Releasable means sort of the same. So increment is connected to the definition of what you would call a product. If your definition of product is not broad enough, not big enough, and it's not focused on providing value to consumers, then you have at least room for improvement. But I try to keep away people from fooling themselves into thinking, yeah, we're doing Scrum, we've got an increment, but it's an increment that maybe you deliver to the release department or the QA department. And then for me, something is wrong, not necessarily in increment, but in the definition of the product, because it's a product increment. It's an increment of what you have defined as a product. So think releasable version of your product. No, and is that wrong? No, it means you have lots of room for improvement, because in the end, Scrum is about increasing your ability to deliver value in the first place to your consumers. Probably depending on where sort of the phase, the life phase of your product, maybe learning might be important, but I would expect that to be like very early on in the product. In the life cycle of a product, so the product management life cycle, as soon as you start growing it, I think for me the only criterion is value to the consumers. Yeah, there's also value in learning. That's good, but it is still suboptimal, certainly in commercial or organizations that are facing fierce competition.
All right. Thanks for clarifying. And I'm noticing it's about half the time, and we're still in the past. So we're really looking forward for the other part about the future. So let's go.
Okay. Cool. So and to connect this to Oak Topologies, defining, knowing your product, and then making sure that your team has all the skills to deliver versions of that product to the market, to consumers, even if those consumers are colleagues, means at least increasing the scope of skills to at least the level of end to end. Might be expanding at least from to end to end. It's also what you said. And what I found in a lot of organizations is the difficulty with looking at teams like that, team composition like that, is what they now call teams is not what I would call teams. because in a company, teams would work for a product, not for governance as part of governance. So on. Governance should not define how people work together. Product should define it. A product should have identified consumers, often people outside of the organization, but even if they are inside of the organization, still treat them as if they were external people. That's a healthy point of view. A product has a product owner. Has at least a number of skills in the team of developers that are, let's say, IT related, technology implementation, software development, coding, testing, architecting, and so on. But ideally also business skills in the same team. So that means what we used to call development team, or what I like to call now team of developers, has skills from lots of silos and departments. And that seems to make it so difficult because department heads don't want to give up control. So that is for me a team. Teams are cutting, the composition of team just cuts through those silos and so on. And that seems to make it very difficult, but this will help us move in org topologies sense to at least B3, where it's at least partially business-wise, control is end-to-end, let's say, or the skills should cover end-to-end work, at least B3, potentially even B4.
I think it's a very great illustration. Thanks for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. But next to that, reimagine your Scrum, important, start with product and then organize your Scrum so that you can optimally serve the people using your product. And then attach to that also stakeholders from within the organization, but starts with consumers. But then the next part of my belief, my dream already formulated in 2013, how about reorganizing around Scrum? More agile teams does not make a more agile organization. So agile teams, Scrum teams should be organized around product, but around that, there should be even more reorganization. Yeah, and for me that goes back even to Conway's law. I think most people will know that. So Conway says that the products, the systems, and it literally said defined broadly, and sort of Ilya, what you also brought up with my definition of product, it's still rather broad, although it's, I think, fairly clear. It's only a product when it delivers value to consumers. So it connects to what Conway said. So Conway said that the product systems that you produce are a reflection, are a mirror of the communication structures that you have in place that you use to build, create those products. So taking it in the other direction, I think the main challenge is start with product again, and then think about what sort of communication structures should we have in place to make sure that we build the best possible products ever. And that's so important. So reorganize around it. What was fascinating when I first formulated this thing called to reversify in 2016, 2017, I only focused on reimagining your Scrum. I had some sort of tangible steps and tangible ideas, and reorganizing around Scrum was just some sort of pretty vague idea by that. It was actually no more than a baseline. So know your product, important because product defines Scrum, and then Scrum should define your structures. So again, sort of bottom up, almost reverse engineering the organization based upon the fact that you're introducing Scrum. And that means in org topology sense, for me, it means it aligns a lot with increasing the scope of the work mandate. Not just IT work, technology work, but also BIS included, and why not up to the higher up levels of the org topologies map. And that's where we enter something that I call product hubs. So if you have a team, multiple teams worked, organized around a product, that is for me a development hub, really important. The next step up would be to form a product hub. Because if we put product at the heart of everything we do, which is really important, and then we've got a product owner for that, an owner of the product who really has a mandate to take decisions, a person that we pulled out of those silos, and her life now revolves around a product. And then you could use Scrum to create the product, to evolve it, to maintain it, to update it, and so on. Yeah, but to manage a product, It's not just delivering a product. It's also talking about the financial aspects, the sales aspect, the promotion, the commercial aspects, marketing, product road mapping, maybe strategies of the product. There's so much more involved in that. And for me, in a product hub is an organizational entity in which we bring all the people that do also all of that other stuff for the product together in one unit. That might be stakeholders, that might be subject matter experts, but we all pull them out of their silos, their functional department, let's say, and we bring them together, facilitated, coach, mentor, whatever, by a Scrum Master, multiple Scrum Masters. So that a product hub becomes a sort of a startup, a mini organization within the organization, having all the skills, all the insights to actually manage the product. Not just the development, the creation, the delivery, the releasing of the product, but all the things. And management outside of that acts as an investor. They should not intervene. This should be a semi-autonomous unit within the organization. Yeah. And these quotes, by the way, on the screen almost literally come from that old paper, 1986, the new product development came. So imagine even by then they already said. And if you picture this within the organization again, we already know a team, multiple teams, all forming a development hub, meaning taking care of the development of the product. Then we're going to add other skills to that, subject matter experts, management experts, stakeholders, and so on, all part of that, and we bring them together in a sort of a new organizational unit. And that is what I call a product hub. Again, going back to that definition of a product. And in all topologies terms, this means going sort of at least up to level C3, end to end, the whole business involved, meaning the whole business, the whole solution, every aspect of, in your terms, Alexei, the solution, every aspect of managing that solution is being covered, not just by distant people, not just by calling people, but by having them in a product hub. And ideally might even go up to C4. Yeah. So that's for me important. And that means you now have this future organizational view that I have is that an organization will gradually move towards a networked structure of product hubs. So that overall, not just within a product hub, but overall in the organization, authority is moved down the line, closer to the people or even in the hands of the people, making decisions, taking decisions. So in that sense, leadership is no longer a purely hierarchical thing, the hippo types of things, but it becomes a distributed quality in which different aspects of a product are co-managed by different types of people, all working, and which unites them is, let's say, purpose. Why does our company even exist? What are we trying to achieve as a company? And the funny thing is sometimes if you stick around long enough, you get to talk for a beautiful community and beautiful people like you guys are. I have no idea what I did to deserve that, but still I love it. Thank you. And sometimes things take time. Sometimes takes several years before things find a place. By the end of 2015, so I'm now talking about 2020, reorganize around Scrum. Already by the end of 2015, I realized later on that I had this idea in my mind. I remember by the end of 2015, I think it was in Seattle, in the US somewhere, and some people asked me about, Gunther, how do you see 2015? How do you see the future of HR? Just sort of out of the blue. And I just out of the blue answered, and by then I had no idea where that came from. I said, the future of Agile is in the small. And then I had to think about what did I actually mean by that, because that's very mystic types of things, whatever. And I started making a picture of that, and it's actually the picture that you see on the screen. That's what I mean. The future of Agile and Scrum is in the small. It's not in large mass production, mass whatever organizations. You can have really large organizations and still they will have small entities like product hubs in it. And that's where I see, that's what I call the future of Agile is in the small. That means More agile teams does not make a more agile organization. You need to know your product, reorganize your Scrum around your product, and then reorganize the organization around your Scrum. So that hopefully gradually, step by step by step, by making it small again and using iterative incremental progress, step by step, you dissolve, you change that old school pyramid structure into that network structure of product hubs, meaning product after product after product. Not all products at the same time, not all teams at the same time. It allows for flexibility. And this would make for me an agile organization, because a product hub can grow, it can shrink, it can be expanded. You can merge two product hubs, you can eliminate a product hub. This builds in agility into the organizational structures. So this is no longer rigid. This offers flexibility. So that is what I mean with my future idea about reorganizing around Scrum. So in 2016, I called it to reversify an organization. I changed my terminology. Alexei, in the introduction, you also said it. So I started calling it moving your Scrum downfield, because in 2020, I wrote a paper about it. It again goes back to that old paper, 1986, the new product development game, in which I said moving the Scrum downfield. So I'd like to say moving your Scrum downfield. Reimagine your Scrum. Had some ideas around it, reorganize around Scrum. But by then I also added a third, let's say, angle to that. Something that I find extremely important. Humanize your workplace upon Scrum. So don't just introduce Scrum to, I don't know, get a better sort of technical way of working, whatever, if you would see that broadly, but also your humane workplace. Because Scrum for me is all about people. We are human beings, people. We are not resources. We are not replaceable pieces of machinery. So far, we are not just AI robots or AI agents or machines, whatever. We are people. So let me, as the last topic of today, let me take you there. Why do I think that is important? First of all, because for me, it's built into Scrum. So in my little book, I wrote about what I call Scrum's DNA. And for me, Scrum's DNA is the combination of two management principles. And the one is what we call empiricism, or empirical process control, meaning the process of regularly inspecting in order to adapt. So that offers, let's say, adaptability in the organization. But the other aspect of Scrum, the other part of Scrum's DNA, because as you know, DNA has two strings, is self-organization. And I feel most organizations, if not all, ignore the self-organization aspect. And in order to deal with complexity, difficult problems, uncertain problems, a lot of uncertainties, unforeseen events popping up, you need a combination. That's why I call it Scrum's DNA. You don't just need adaptability, but you need to bring people together with skills, insights, expertise, and allow them, invite them even, push them even to self-organize. Make sure they have the skills, then get out of the way, like I said, management acting as an investor, not intervening on a daily basis. Let those people figure it out. Risk mitigation comes from inspection adaptation, working in short cycles. So I feel, if I think about Scrum's DNA, two aspects, I feel the focus is way too much on the process aspect of Scrum and not enough on the people aspect of Scrum. That means all those organizations set up micro teams of Scrum, and even those micro teams can't truly self-organize. They are still being told what to do. They can't say no to this. They're pulled into lots of other meetings and things on. They're all over the place, meaning they cannot decide how to organize their own life at work. So I think that's really important. It's not just important from, let's say, the perspective of Scrum, but also from look around you guys in organizations. These are old figures, 2021, but even by then, it's from Belgium, that's the country where I live, from the official Social Security institutes that we have at the government level. They said, oh my God, the number of people at home due to depression, burnout, long-term absence only keeps increasing. And we have moved 4 years on, and it's still happening. I think in Belgium, about 10 up to 15% of the full workforce is at home because of long-term illness and problems. So I wonder how bad must it get before we understand that we need to fundamentally reorganize the workplace. And I believe Scrum is a really great tool for that. And this is from worldwide research from the Gallup Institute, again, figures from 2017, but it was confirmed in their new reports and so on. That means overall, across the planet, only 15 up to 20, sometimes 25% of people are actually engaged, energized by their work, energized by their organization. 85% of people are actually not engaged. It's on average between 50 and 60%. And what is terrible is that about 15 to 20% of people working in organizations are what they call actively disengaged. That is still a nice way to say it, because it's people working against their organization. It's people working against their colleagues, fighting their colleagues, fighting the organization, which is crazy, but research says it's a reality. So what are we going to do about that? And rather than using Scrum to maintain the rat race and turn up the hamster wheel to make it even run quicker, which is actually happened with this focus on volume, this industrial mindset, this corporate way of thinking, what I think we have failed to do. And if we keep failing that, Scrum will become irrelevant. We have not introduced Scrum as a way to get people from the industrial mindset or the industrial paradigm to the agile mindset or the agile paradigm. Not from volume to value. And that is, I think, the biggest challenge that we have. And Scrum is all about self-organization. So Scrum introduced together with the self-organization that is so essential in it is a tool to not just liberate people, but also re-engage, re-energize people. And self-organization is not some sort of weird, crazy idea. All of us, everybody at home, we self-organize all the time. We buy cars, we buy houses, we sell cars, we sell houses, we look for a new job, we go on holidays, we plan our holidays. Everything we do in life is sort of self-organized. So self-organization is an ability that every single human being has. But in our professional environments, it seems we are choosing not to benefit from that. We keep telling people what they need to do. We think we know better than the people we hired to do a certain job. We think that we know better how to do that job. So self-organization is limited not by the fact that people are not able to do that, but by the fact that we limit it, we kill it, we prevent it, we impede it. So building on Scrum, you can open up self-organization. We can offer a context, an environment where people can finally apply the natural ability to self-organize. Scrum just provides boundaries for that. Yeah? And self-organization works better against a purpose, a vision that knows why they exist, a product vision, which is, I think, more powerful than the goals that were to the Scrum Guide, by the way, knowing why are we building the product. Again, within the boundaries of the product, who are our consumers? What are their problems? How are you trying to help them? And then self-organize against that and mitigate your risks of doing something wrong, something that will take you totally off track, whatever, by working in short cycles. But that's a very different way of working than the what I would call the industrial mindset. So self-organization, regardless of the fact that it was skipped from the latest Scrum Guide, is for me the overarching management principle that we need to build on. And self-organization sort of instantiates by starting at the level of self-managing teams, for me, meaning teams that organize their own work within a sprint. within the boundaries of a sprint against the purpose of creating at least one releasable valuable increment no later than by the end of the sprint. That's about it. That's a self-managing team. The only boundary we have on that is the boundaries I talked about, but the additional boundary is that we ask people to reflect, inspect upon themselves on a daily basis via a daily scrum. Yeah? Not self-organizing, meaning one person might be the manager, might be department head, might be the senior technical, whatever lead you have, telling a whole group or several groups who should be doing what at what point of time. That is not self-organization. But beyond that, self-organization doesn't have to stop at the level of a self-managing team. It can go on to self-designing teams within a development hub, within a truly correctly composed team or combination of teams. If people can organize their own work, their own tasks, their activities on a daily basis, that means people also have the creativity, the intelligence to decide what skills do we need, what skills do we no longer need, what skills are more needed in the other team, so they can become a self-designing unit. And if you would move up to, for me, the product hub level, at least in a product hub, you can be self-organizing in the sense that you can start thinking about how do we promote people, how do we reward people, what are the incentives. Think about educational development and so on. So it no longer has to be part of that old school pyramid structure. And that might be part of your C3, C4 level in org topologies. So just focusing on self-management of a team within the sprint is for me a very limited view on what self-organization can do. And if we really build on self-organization when we introduce Scrum, I've seen that we can re-engage people up to the point that people, and for me, that's a good thing, up to the point that somebody says, you know what, this is not what I like to do. I'm going to do something else. Cool. I'm happy for you that you found in life something that you don't want to do and help you think about what you want to do. If that means leaving the team, leave the organization, I'm happy with that. That's a lot better than being not engaged, 50-60% of the workforce, or even being actively disengaged, or burning yourself out, ending up in spending months and months and months at home, worrying, whatever. Not helpful. So Scrum for me is a tool to humanize the workplace. Not just build better products, but humanize the workplace. And those things should go hand in hand. Building a great product should re-energize you. Alexei, did you want to ask something? Or?
No. I have a lot of things I would like to say and highlight, but I'll give you, of course, time to finish. Like I have a lot of thoughts now in my head after your slides.
Wonderful. That's good. That's one of the ideas of presentations, classes. Plant a lot of seeds, sowing a lot of seeds, hoping that in the end some of them will grow into a beautiful flower. You never know. Well, this is sort of where I stand today. It's 2025. Last year in 2024, I started combining things, and finally the puzzle was sort of complete. And I then called it spin up your Scrum, because I don't know, I call it moving your Scrum downfield, spin up your Scrum. I don't know, I hope anybody recognizes still this little device. It's a fidget spinner. Our kids have used it a lot. And then I realized, okay, those three aspects, sort of like, yeah, spin up your Scrum. In that sense, reimagine your Scrum, rethink, know your product, reorganize your Scrum around your product. At the same time, reorganize around Scrum. At the same time, humanize your workplace. So don't do it sequentially, do it all the time concurrently, so that you gradually move from that old school pyramid structure to that network structure of product hubs, where every product hub is, like, you could also call it a value center if you want, or maybe in your terminology, Alex, a solution center. So spin up your Scrum. And what is the problem with the sort of the massive adoption of Scrum? That also within, let's say, broad sense, the Scrum communities across the globe, there is a limited amount of people that will understand this, that will go for this, that will believe in this. There's only maybe 10, 15, 20% of people in line with engagement figures around the world that are engaged to do more with Scrum. That is the downside of the massive adoption of Scrum. It's also why in my communities I started going back from massive and volumes. I don't care about how many people follow me. I don't care about how many people sign up for my newsletter that are part of my Scrum Caretakers meetup. I don't care. I want to work with people that want this, that are willing, that are open to do this, that are eager to do this. But that's why I said in my description, not so many people will get this.
Yeah, Gunther.
So thank you very much for listening, at least. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for giving this presentation, all the work that you've put into also linking to our or Topologies thinking tool. And I still need to thank you for the session that we had in France where you gave some valuable feedback. Thanks again. So people know you have also actively contributed to this product. The thing actually I was thinking about for in the last part of your talk, so actually you're saying, yeah, people at home take all kinds of decisions, and then at work, we're not self-organizing anymore. Isn't that maybe a part of human nature, some laziness or comfort zone behavior that we see, that it's just difficult to beat, to get everybody into that, positively, actively taking also responsibility at work?
I would honestly say no. Why? I get what you mean, but let me give my perspective on things. For me, it's an expression of that industrial mindset. People treating people as dumb, mindless workers that just have to follow the plan, do whatever we will tell them. It's sort of this sort of hidden ladder of intelligence almost. But I understand what you mean, because when we come in and we do Scrum and we try to do it properly, even with the complete self-organization, people have not been allowed to self-organize for several years, often a few decades. It's not in the mindset of, let's say, the organization. It's not in the culture of the organization. So we come in with Scrum and people don't believe it. Because whenever they did something out of the box, something trying to be innovative, whatever, something that they were not supposed to do, when it turned out fine, everybody, wow, beautiful champagne, confetti, whatever. But when it went wrong, their heads were chopped off. That means we have instilled a culture of fear. We now come in with Scrum, we say, you can self-organize. Fine, we're not going to tell you what to do. It's going to take a long time before people see that we now are serious about it. It's one of the biggest things with all these digital transformations, people, managers, leaders, whatever, we now do Scrum. Yes, you can self-organize. But even after 3, 4 sprints, the results are not what those people expected. Then they start intervening again. And then we just send out a signal. We said it was Scrum. We said this was about self-organization, but it was a joke. People do not believe it. So it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a lot of patience from leadership and management to not intervene, to send out the signal to people, it's serious. So it's going to take a long time, Roland, for that self-organization and the results of self-organization to emerge. It's not because people are not able to do it. It's not because people are lazy, but it's because for decades and decades we have denied them the right to do that. So they don't believe us anymore.
I also like to thank you, Gunther, for this talk. I think your talk reminded me why I was attracted to Scrum like 15, 20 years ago, because of exactly those things you're mentioning. Still, your last slide or your last words on the last slide were like, yeah, people will have hard times seeing that reimagined version of Scrum. And that reminded me of a discussion we had with another Scrum guru, Jim Coplin, the author of Scrum Patterns. And he challenged us quite badly with Earl at some point. He said, hey guys, he says you map different frameworks, team topologies, less safe on octopologies. Why can't I find any mapping of Scrum? Are you afraid to show what you're thinking? And actually, that led us with Roland to an enlightenment of some sort. That actually, well, there are different kinds of Scrum you can say, or different flavors of Scrum. The one you're describing is very dear to my heart. That's also how I understand the initial idea. But if you again go out into the industry and see how the majority of Scrum implementation work, it's far from that. And it's not good or bad. Like at Topologies, we really try not to be judgmental, and we try to be,
Cool.
like cold-headed and say, yeah, maybe those orgs just have different optimizing goal. Maybe they just need different things. And if you accept that thought for a moment, then yes, if your organization would like to use Scrum to optimize for something else, like fast flow with teams, as team topologies also is helping you to optimize, then you would build completely different Scrum. You would do Scrum per team, not Scrum per development hub, right? Or you can also use Scrum, I guess, to manage your a narrow specialist almost to a resource utilization, right? Which is, of course, not what Scrum was invented for. But 20, 30 years after, I think we still see those different ways of how Scrum, like mechanically, can be applied to help manage and reach different optimizing goals. And the one that you are showing is, of course, is about something else. Is about increasing adaptability, learning, self-management, engagement.
Yep.
Of course, if companies want those goodies, they would want to try your vision, your image of Scrum. That's how I see it.
Yeah. But I think I truly think the world is in need of moving from that sort of industrial and corporate mindset to something different. And it's a lot of what you said, sort of the way a lot of organizations use Scrum is to sort of optimize internal efficiency, effectiveness, whatever you want to call it. It's all about internal optimization.
Right.
You can optimize your internal way of working as much as you want. In the end, where you get your money from is from your users, your consumers, the outside world, or whatever partners or people that will use your things. So in the end, that suboptimal optimization, that suboptimal thing of looking at the inside, that's what I want to bring, is to shift your focus from the internal way of the organization to what you are achieving.
Right. And you also said in the beginning, this talk is not about AI, but so to fix that, or to just add a little bit of AI into the talk, because we are in the AI era, and I think everything is impacted by AI. I mean, many companies, in my experience, and I've been consulting for many years, they hadn't even dreamed up to your level of seeing Scrum because of different arguments like, hey, the cognitive load of people would just go over the roof. You cannot manage too many repositories, or you cannot learn so many things, or you cannot do that, and that. And I think with AI, it is actually changing, because now a team can open up, say, a new code repository they haven't worked yet, and ask AI, hey, AI, explain me like what it does, what's the architecture, how do I run a test here, add me this test. So actually, AI revolution and all this tooling and agentic world actually helps, I think, the teams to start exploring your vision of Scrum. And hopefully, I think we should see more of these high level archetypes like B and C level on our topologies map, try and Scrum, because it is now easier, cheaper, to create a learning organization than it was maybe 10 years ago because of AI.
Yeah.
Do you see this happening with your clients? Some of these movements, trends already?
Not yet. I understand your view, and I think, and I buy into that. I think using AI as a team might sort of extend, in a way, expand the skills that you have, the insight, the information that you have. Yeah, it will. I don't think it will ever replace to self-organization of people. Using it as a
No,
tool and instrument is really
it's not to
important.
replace, but it's to help people learn faster and close those gaps on the map, so to say.
Yeah. But you know, in most organizations, sort of the corporate BS, they try to it's like sort of limiting the access to certain websites or so, do you know, or things. And a lot of organizations will probably do that. Again, it shows a lack of trust, and in that sense, almost a disrespect for their people. It's again about controlling people all the time. Give up on that. Look at the results, look at the value you bring. In most organizations, when in 2016, 17, started building that idea about reverse fire as a sort of alternative approach to an agile transformation, I also always started with the question, what are you hoping for? Why are you introduced to Scrum? Forget about Scrum for now. I want to know, why am I here? Why did you invite me to talk or do coaching or a class or whatever? What are you hoping to achieve? And it always boils down to, in a way, agility and value. And then I can offer, hey, so this is how we would do it with Scrum. But start with why. Start with your overall purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for these thoughts. We've been live for a bit more than an hour, and I think there's been a lot of good thoughts that people still need to digest. So I recommend rewatching this recording. And just to finish that, you were discussing this terminology about moving the Scrum downfield, right? And I talked to our AI org Topologies custom GPT, what it makes of the word moving Scrum downfield. And actually, it believes moving downfield means this, horizontal scaling, just adding more teams and more teams, which is not exactly what you are describing. You are describing something else. And to maybe give you a little gift, if you will, Gunther, we have a term elevate, because I think it's about elevating Scrum or elevating Safe or elevating team topologies. You can try to elevate, meaning giving people higher purpose, giving people more freedom to act and fulfill the human nature.
Elevate your Scrum. That sounds really great.
Thanks a lot. It's been wonderful to have you here with us. Hope
Thank
to
you
meet you
again
one day.
for the invitation. I will also share
Awesome.
a PDF version of my PowerPoint, by the way, so you can share it with anybody who attended or in the Topologies.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. All the best.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Cool. Thank you.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so the stream on YouTube has been